gonna hold on. The name of the parsha is Acharei Mot, which means after the death. And I'm wondering if any of you remember what death they're talking about, because this happened after the death. Cindy, you're muted.
Aaron's two sons.
Aaron's two sons, and how did they die?
They went into the tent and had the incense pans, but they did something wrong and they died because of it.
Right. Anybody know any more details about what happened? Anybody remember?
Was it they got too close to the presence of God?
Well, they actually gave an unsanctioned sacrifice that they weren't supposed to give. They did it on their own, and they were immediately like immolated or consumed by fire. And what's fascinating, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is that it's the next words are Aaron said nothing. Aaron didn't say anything when that happened. He was completely silent. I am assuming you all studied that last time. But I wanted to say what this is something I love about Judaism, because I looked at the commentaries of why they were killed, why they died. What did they do that was so wrong? So does anybody know or have any ideas what they did, what they could have done that was so wrong? Any suggestions of that? Douglas?
Didn't they bring in non-sacred fire?
Right. But to be burned alive is pretty drastic. And don't forget, this was the first time they were doing it. So they were neophytes, they were young. So the commentaries are fascinating. And this is what's great about Judaism. One commentary I found said it's because they were arrogant, and they said they wanted to replace the old men. They wanted to replace Moses and Aaron, and they thought, it's our turn. We should take over. So it was kind of a signal of a coup in a way. If we think about, I don't know, if we've in Women's Torah study, we studied this about Absalom, when he took over, he rebelled against his father and declared himself king. And he went to the palace in Jerusalem, and David had fled, and David had left 12 concubines behind to watch over the palace, and Absalom put him on the roof, and he had sex with each one in public. And this is in the text to show that he's now the king and these are his concubines for all to see. So, I mean, one suggestion is these two young sons, well, they were his two oldest sons, actually, but how old were they? We're saying, it's our turn, and, we're taking over, and we're the priests now. And so they basically sinned, and they died. The other explanation I found was that they were so holy that they wanted to be close to God, and they knew they wanted to give something personal to God. So they did this, and they knew they could possibly die, but they didn't care because their souls would be with God. So that's probably more of a Hasidic, explanation, that because they try not to find anybody in a bad light. So even these two sons, but I think it's fascinating in Judaism that you could have one that says they were sinners and one that says they were saints side by side. It was side by side when I found them. And that we as Jews can go, yeah, it could be, or I don't know, or whatever. But it's kind of delightful intellectually to contemplate these different possibilities. So this Parsha starts right after that. And so we're going to look at what the concerns were. Now, also, if you're a biblical scholar and you're going by the, what's it called? The theory, I can't think of the name, or I think it's the documentary theory, the theory that 4 different authors or schools wrote the Torah. Leviticus is obviously written by the Levites, by the priests. So this is, a lot of laws, a lot of sacrifices, but it's interesting when the rabbis later were organizing the parshas, because it was all one run-on thing, and then they divided it. What they put together with Achrei Mot, after they died. And I mean, it's pretty obvious when you see it, but not if they were going to choose a ritual or a holiday after this, what do you think it would be? After the sinning. I'm giving you a
Yom
hint.
Kippur?
Who said Yom Kippur?
I did.
Yes, this is right. Yom Kippur is now what they start to talk about here, right after in this parsha, Yom Kippur. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. Parshat, and then there's some other pretty interesting things in there. I just wanted to say it starts, the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron when they drew near and died. So that's the first sentence. Now I've jumped around because it's got lots of things, but here, after talking about this special sacrifice and all this kind of sacrifices, they go into this. So Cindy, why don't you read? But you're muted.
Yom
Okay.
Kippur.
Yeah.
And this shall be to you a law for all time. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall practice self-denial, and you shall do no manner of work, neither the citizen nor the alien who resides among you. For on this day atonement shall be made for you to purify you of all your sins. You shall be pure before the Lord. It shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial. It is a law for all time.
Okay, so first of all, are you surprised that it's called the 7th month? Because Rosh Hashanah we now consider, but originally the first month was Nisan, which was the month, of Pesach. That was considered the beginning of the year, not the 7th month, Tishrei. And for some reason it changed. I don't know all the laws, honestly, of the calendar, so I can't tell you why. But at this point, it was the 7th month. And it's a Shabbat of Shabbats. And it's very interesting because if you think of other cultures, I mean, I feel like, Brad, you know a lot about this. How was atonement made? I mean, and wasn't it more drastic than just not eating in other cultures? I feel like they had to desecrate themselves or let blood or something. I don't know. I feel like in other cultures, or there was no atonement. If you were a sinner, that was it. There was no ability to start over, to purify yourselves and become pure, which is one of the things, honestly, I do a lot of Beit Dins, which is when, people convert to Judaism and they come before 3 rabbis and we talk to them. I would say 80% of the time, it's a big shock to us, the rabbis, when you ask them, the people converting to Judaism, what's their favorite holiday or what do they like, what really resonates with them, they say Yom Kippur. And we always look at each other and go, Yom Kippur? That's your favorite? And they love this idea of starting over, of purifying yourself, of atoning, of asking forgiveness and getting a new chance, as opposed to you're damned from birth, you're a sinner, you're going to hell, all this other stuff that they were raised with, that there's no opportunity for that. And you're constantly trying to repent for original sin or whatever happened, thousands of years ago, if it even happened. So this idea is we take for granted, but I don't know that there was that. I mean, if you look at the Iliad, does anybody know what they had to do in order to just get the winds to blow, and in order to atone for things? They had to kill Agamemnon, had to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia in order for him to do it. So when you look at that and you look at this, it's just like self-denial. It's a Sabbath of Sabbaths. You don't work, you don't eat. And then the priest has very special duties on that particular day. And this is the only time he can do it. which is here. Okay. Okay. Susan, do you want to read Susan Ehrlich?
Sure. I had trouble getting in, and Hannah helped me. So
Good. Glad to have you.
Okay, it should be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial. It's a law for all time. And the priest who is anointed and consecrated as priest in his father's place shall make atonement, wearing the holy linen garments.
Okay, so in his father's place means, we had the two older sons. They were supposed to be in this father's place, but they're dead. So now it's the two younger sons are left, or whoever it is who's appointed as through the generations from and so we also learn from this that how is the priesthood passed down? It's through a bloodline. Brad, yes.
Well, I think there's something curious here. I mean, we think of the Torah saying that sin goes down to lower generations. But in fact, what this passage is showing is that the sins of the children are flowing up to Aaron, to the father, who needs to make atonement. So the beginning of the passage, which you skipped, which you cut out, deals with Aaron making atonement. And here it seems to say that all priests are somehow tainted with this kind of original sin. I know Jews don't believe in original sin, but it seems like the sins of these two boys is somehow impacting the priesthood going forward.
Well, that's one possibility. Another is that the priests atone first, because everybody needs atonement. That's number one. And it's not that we all need atonement, but they are now going into the Holy of Holies to atone for all of Israel. So in order for them, they atone first so that they're pure, so they can then go in and pray and ask God to forgive everybody else. So the atonement they're going to make is for all the people. If we finish the sentence, you say, he shall purge the innermost. First, he's purging it, meaning cleaning it. I looked that up. They cleanse it. They purify it with water and they purge the altar, and he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the congregation. So he has to be completely pure through atonement. And actually the priest has to kill a bull, and there's this whole thing that I didn't want to get into, but there's two goats, and one is sacrificed, and one goes down into Azazel, and this goat carries the sins and moves away. So there's a symbolic purifying of the priest, so he can then purify or atone for everyone else or pray for atonement. So I don't know that he's any more tainted than any human being, but he's got to be first in terms of purifying himself, so that he can then, that his story, his prayers and his behavior will make atonement for all of us. Now, the Hasidim totally changed this. I'm sure many of you know that story about the man who couldn't read and he whistled. It's a Baal Shem Tov story, which completely changed the whole idea of atonement, where everybody was praying on Yom Kippur, and the Baal Shem Tov was praying and praying and praying, and nothing was happening. And then this shepherd walked in, and he didn't know any words. He didn't know any prayers. He couldn't read. So he said, well, all I know how to do is whistle. In some stories, I can play my flute, or I could say the alphabet. I mean, it's like he's very simple. And he starts to do it, and everybody starts turning around and saying, be quiet, be quiet. And then the Baal Shem Tov turns around and says, this guy's prayers are the most pure, and because of him, we're all forgiven. So that's changed. But I don't know that he's tainted because of the sons, but I think that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Parshat does begin with reference to the sons. So there's some kind of connection going on here with what happened to the sons.
Yeah, I agree with you, but maybe it's okay. We've had a super big sin. We better now lay out a a formula for how to do atonement, not for the priest and for all of us. I mean, it could be, but I've never thought of that you feel like they're always atoning for what the sons did down the generations. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, in a sense.
Well,
I mean, the passage didn't have to begin with reference to the sons.
Okay.
But it does.
Right.
And why? Why does it begin with reference to the sons? I mean, I don't know. I just think it's interesting.
It is interesting. I definitely feel the connection has to do with atonement, whether you say they're tainted or not, but we're all going to sin. And, it's sometimes like, well, we never want this to happen again, so we better atone yearly instead of getting so bad that we're going to be, consumed by fire. Okay, so why don't you read this part? Susan, you were reading.
Yeah.
He shall
I want to say something too for atonement.
Yeah.
That the Catholics have it with confession. And I thought they had it also with the monks' self-flagellation. I thought that was long-standing. You confess and to the priest, and then, he said, whatever, Father will have mercy on you. So I thought there were prior, not before the Hebrews, but subsequently there were methods for atonement.
Right,
Phew,
but this is like 1,000 years before.
No, I know it. So you're saying for 1,000 years before, because afterwards there were methods for atonement.
But not, it's very clear you're not supposed to desecrate your skin or cut yourself or do anything extreme. Ours is just fasting, no drink, no food. It's not hitting, not wearing a hair shirt. In fact, there are these people called Nazir, people who want to be really strict and they let their hair grow and they don't shave and they do all this stuff. And the Torah says, you can only do that for a year. That's it. You're not allowed to spend your life in some kind of self-flagellation.
Right.
That's not the Jewish, we don't do that. So, okay, Penina.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the whole thing is the target is inclusion. So even the people that think that maybe they're not good enough and something already happened before that, they didn't do exactly what was supposed to be done, yet they are included into all these things. Look at Aaron. His sons did that, and it wasn't his greatest moment, but he's still doing
the golden calf too. Aaron did the golden calf, right?
Exactly, but he's still doing it for the good of everybody, and it's supposed to be comfortable for everybody. You're gonna do it, and you're gonna feel better. Look, even he's gonna do it, and he's gonna do it again, even though he had this trouble happening to him that his son didn't, will stray from the right road or something. Who knows what they did? Maybe I thought that my opinion is that they brought a wooden god, a wooden idol into the temple because it caught fire, and that would be it. So because they say avodah zarah. Avodah zarah is when you pray to idols.
It's idol worship. It's strange.
Exactly. That's what you call avodah, and they call that esh zarah, a strange fire. So I'm thinking that the only thing that comes to my mind, it's to enforce inclusion, or to not enforce, I would say to encourage inclusion. Like, do it. Look, this happened to him, but now he's gonna atone and he's gonna pray, and it's for everybody.
You know why I love that? Because it says it's you and the stranger who lives with you, the alien or the stranger. So they're saying anyone is worthy of atonement in our community and forgiveness. So I think that's very interesting, and thank you for that. Okay, let's continue.
Okay.
All right, and hold on, share. Hold on, let me just do this.
Okay, and the priest who is anointed and consecrated as priest in his father's place, or did I already read this?
Yeah.
To make atonement. Where
He
the
shall
holy
purge.
he shall purge the innermost holy of holies, and he shall purge the tent of meeting and the altar, and he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the congregation.
So this is the Kohen Hagadol, and the Holy of Holies is this tiny little section where the ark is, the ark, the Aron with the 10 commandments inside. It's the golden ark with the 2 cherubim, these 2 angels on their wings, and he can only go in there on Yom Kippur once a year. And he has to be told, and he's the one who basically, it's kind of like in a different level, when they vote for the Pope, they all go into this room and they lock the door and nobody comes out until they decide, well, he goes into this room alone and he, prays and atones. If even today on Yom Kippur, if you're in a more observant shul, the cantor now gets all the way down flat on his face and puts his hands out, completely prostrate. That's what the high priest would have done in the Holy of Holies, and the cantor does it now. Not always our cantors, but in other shuls, that's what they do. Okay, and
didn't they have ropes tied to their legs so that they could be pulled out?
I didn't know that. Maybe.
Yeah, well, that's obviously a folk tale or
oh, I don't know.
But
Okay.
they had ropes tied to their legs, and so they could be pulled out if they got stuck there. And the only thing I see here is this addresses Brad's point about the atonement for priests, if he's doing it for future priests and also for past priests.
And all the priests who worked in the temple.
Right.
I mean, there was the high priest, but then there were all the other priests. Okay, continue.
And this should be a statute forever for you, that atonement be made for the people of Israel for all their sins once a year.
There we go. The inclusion.
Yeah, it's pretty
All
amazing.
the people.
It's pretty amazing that we have this idea. Okay, so that was one section. And then the next section I wanted to talk about was eating blood. And this whole idea, it's not just kashrut, but I also, I always say when they tell you not to do something so strongly, it's because people were doing it. So otherwise there wouldn't be a law against it. So this is now about consuming blood, which I guess in other cultures they did. I don't know if it was part of it. Brad, do you want to read?
Okay. If any of the house of Israel or of the strangers who reside among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people.
So it's pretty strong prohibition. Going.
For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life.
So almost in every case, when you do a sacrifice on the altar, you splash the blood off. You splash some on the ends, the corners. They're like these horns. The priest puts a little blood on his finger, I don't know, on his ear, on his toe. But you splash the blood on the altar. Nobody eats it or consumes it at all. Okay, keep going.
Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who resides among you eat blood.
I guess people ate blood. I mean, it's so strong. They must have been doing it, is what I have to understand from this, because otherwise, why is it so reiterated that people consume blood in other drank blood, I guess. Maybe they thought it had powers. Yes.
They do think it has powers. First of all, today, also, when you see a prime rib or something in a restaurant that it's floating in blood, so it's not that unusual, and the blood makes it tasty. And I remember reading about cannibals. Now they ate the whole person. They didn't have to just settle for blood. But there was a belief that they don't ingest the strong qualities of that person. So you don't eat old women, fortunately. And you eat warriors.
Right, but I don't think it was human blood, but I do think that there must have been this idea. A lot of times, some of our laws are in conflict or in opposition to pagan practices. So there must have been something about maybe eating the blood of animals, or it's
Yeah.
animals. Because if we go further and we look, okay, Merle, do you want to read? Any one also of the people of Israel.
Anyone also of the people of Israel, or of the strangers who resides among them, who takes in hunting any beast or bird that may be eaten, shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. For the life of every creature is its blood is its life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any creature, for the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off.
It's
Cut off from
really
what?
cut off from the community,
Okay.
like your band, your whatever. Oh,
I mean, I have friends that think I'm crazy because I eat such rare meat.
well,
And so
okay.
it's this,
We're cutting you off.
I'm being cut off. I'm
Okay.
reading and cutting myself off.
All right, keep
And
going.
every person who eats what dies of itself, or what is torn by beasts, whether he is a native or a stranger, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash them or bathe his flesh, he shall bear his iniquity.
So if you find a dead animal and you eat it, I guess, or you eat an animal that's been wounded, you're unclean. I mean, I don't, I can't remember the order if the kashrut laws have been given yet. I don't think so, because soon it's going to be even more, specific. You have to kill them a certain way. You can only eat certain things. You can't eat anything. But this blood taboo is very strong. I mean, I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts. Cindy.
Well, just my thought, I know it's not eating, but are there some who won't do blood transfusions because of this?
Well, that's Jehovah's Witnesses are the only ones I know don't do it. But oh, you mean from this particular passage?
Yeah, it's not eating, but you're receiving blood.
That's interesting. I don't know, because they're very literal in their understanding of the Bible. So that's a good thought. But this idea of the taboo of blood, we can, probably in the time it made sense. People said, oh, how I know why they're saying that, because the Canaanites, do this, or the Philistines do that, or whatever, but we don't really know what they did, but it was a big taboo. Susan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was looking for their new icons down here. Well, they say in the Torah, we just read it, it's a life force. So the pagans drink the life force, as do the cannibals and others of that animal. But there's also the Noahide laws. One of the strangest one is you shall not eat the flesh of a living animal.
Right.
So apparently that was being done, which is pretty disgusting, if you ask me. So I think there is precedence for this. And then also, don't they say that God wanted people to be vegetarians, which was Adam and Eve initially, and then he made a concession that they could eat animals, but then they had to do it with some observance, and recognition of God's.
Yes, if you look at the creation story, in it, God says that I give you all these plants and fruits and things to eat, and animals to shepherd and steward and rule over. there's an implication that you're not going to be eating animals. And actually, in the Torah, there's that section in the desert where they say, we want meat, we want meat. And they start
Yes.
complaining, and God gives them quails, so many quails that they all get sick. You know, it's like,
Yes.
you want meat? I'm going to ram it down your throat kind of idea. But also, I've read that in ancient Israel, most Israelites rarely had meat. They mainly ate vegetables and cheeses and, you know, things like that, eggs and whatever, and bread. And that's why going to the temple and doing a sacrifice was such a big deal, because you got to eat meat. Because when you went to Jerusalem and you gave a sacrifice, some of it was burned, some of it was given to the priests, and some of it was for your family. And you sat around and you ate barbecue, basically. And we know that because we know it from many places. But if you look at the story of Samuel in the first book, in the story of Hannah, which is his mother, it starts with, you know, they went to the sanctuary to give their sacrifice. It wasn't the temple yet. There were multiple sanctuaries around the country. And they talk about how her husband always gave her a double portion to eat because she was his favorite, and she had no children, and his other wife had sons, and so he would give her a double portion of the meat. So it was a big treat to eat meat in ancient Israel. They didn't eat a lot of it. So I thought that was very interesting. Okay, so now we're getting, oh, whoops, I just saw somebody, just a second. How do I stop the share? But first I'll share and then I'll stop share. Yes. Who raised their hands? Oh, Panina. You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. I think it was a way of making them acknowledge or feel that they're not animals, that they
Oh,
are people.
I always love, you have
And
some
they
great
can have-
ideas.
And they can have the brains, the ability to control their behavior. So I think most of the laws were actually made for that. But this one in particular, it's to separate us from the animals, to separate us from the strange behavior of other people who were even eating other people. And this whole idea is that we are not machines and we are not animals. There is the ability to think and the ability to judge and to decide. That's the whole idea, to decide what is it that we're going to do. It's not what they did that was important. It's the fact that they're going to do something, that they are thinking, that they have a discretion. I'm not going to do this today. I'm a person, I'm not an animal. And I
But
think
I like the
whole
idea.
idea.
I like the idea of an animal that would eat just raw and bloody and whatever. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're
Exactly.
killing it humanely. We're taking out the
Right.
blood. We're cooking
Right.
it. We're
Right.
salting it. We're taking our time.
Whatever. It's all a way of showing that you have some kind of a plan that you're thinking. You're not just doing it because at that moment, or maybe the next person, the next animal is sick. So think, look around, pay attention. That's the whole idea.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now we're getting to the part that is, okay, so now what we're getting to is the sexual taboos. It's all in the same parsha. Whoops, I don't know why this happened. And what is this? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say something that following Panina, that's exactly what I was going to say. That is controlling your animal instincts, and sex is a biggie. I mean, eating is a biggie, and this follows it.
Wait, hold on. I have to
Have
stop
to
the
be like
sharing.
animals.
Yes, but the homosexuality is the one that we're going to talk about, because that is the one that is the most controversial, and it's fascinating what I've found. Okay, so Rebecca, do you want to read?
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, I am the Lord your God. You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt where you lived, and you shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, to which I am bringing you. You shall not walk in their statutes.
Okay,
My-
so I think this is very, very important that everything that we're about to read as a taboo is something that was done in Egypt or in Canaan. So this is what we're not doing are things that were done in Egypt and in Canaan. And you are separating yourself. You have a different God and you have a different set of laws and rules for life. So I think that's important to keep in our head. Keep going.
My rules alone shall you observe, and faithfully follows my laws. I am the Lord your God. You shall keep my laws and my rules, by the pursuit of which man shall live. I am the Lord.
Okay, so when it says uncovered nakedness, which it says over and over, it means have sex with. It means have sex with. So who has not read? I don't remember. Let me look. Merle, have you? Everybody's read, right? Everybody's read. Okay, so I'll go back to. Oh, I'm sorry, Penina. You read.
You want me to read? I'll read.
I want you to read.
Where is it?
I'm going to show it to you.
Oh.
Okay, from 6.
Where is it?
Right here.
Oh, none of you shall approach any one of his flesh to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord.
So anyone who you're related to. But what is you shall not have sex with anyone that you're related to. Okay.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness.
So what does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't know. I think they were smarter than us. They didn't need
you don't sleep with your father because he belongs to your mother. So don't take your mother's sexual partner. Don't take it. Okay.
Because it's like you are betraying the other person.
But also
you're doing something. It's like today, if you're going to be, you know that somebody's married and you had an affair with them.
Yeah, but this is your father. You should not sleep with your father.
It's the same thing.
Well, he's married.
He's married to a woman.
Well, it's not only that.
It's your father.
Don't forget, it's not about that only. It's also about what they did in Egypt and Canaan. You got to keep that in mind. Okay.
I want to tell you something. I have nephews, 2 nephews who are first cousins, and they both came from 2 sisters. And they had to, New York wouldn't let them get married. They went to Israel and they got married.
2 men?
No, a woman and a man.
You said nephews, so you mean a niece and a nephew?
A niece and a nephew from 2 sisters, my sisters-in-law.
Right.
And they wouldn't let them get married in Cleveland. And I think they had to go to a different state that allowed it, or I think they went to Israel and they allowed it.
I don't think so, because if it's taboo in the Torah, I would.
But they got married. They got married a Jewish wedding. And they have beautiful children, healthy and everything. But the thing is that the law that they can't, because they're afraid that something that the kids may be
genetics.
Yeah, that the kids may be not normal or something.
Right. Okay, keep going.
Okay. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness.
So even if he has a wife and it's not, you know who did that? I mean, some of these things were happened. Like Reuben slept with Yaakov's wife, Jacob, his father's wife, Bilhah, even though, he wasn't his mother, but it was still his father's wife. A lot of these things now are forbidden that previously people did. One more.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister, your father's daughter, or your mother's daughter, whether brought up in the family or in another home.
Okay, so who brought up? Who did this?
In the family or in another home.
Who did this?
You shall uncover the nakedness.
Wait, Penina. Who did that?
Absalom.
Yehuda?
Absalom. He slept with
Right,
his sister
right,
Tamar.
right.
She was his
Right.
father's daughter, not his mother's daughter. And they said, you can't do
Right.
this. So what I'm showing you is things they time passed and more laws. Okay, well, the last one for you, Penina.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your son's daughter or of your daughter's daughter, for the nakedness is your own nakedness. See, it's like a matter of, look at that. It's a matter of recognizing that if they do that, they might come up with some
This
defect.
is granddaughters. You shall not have sex
Yeah.
with your granddaughter or your.
Right.
Okay. Okay, Cindy.
Is that because it's going to make her like not fit to be married to somebody else?
Probably, among other things. Yes.
Got you. Okay.
I think
Also,
there's a lot more reasons not to sleep with your granddaughter.
there's a lot of reasons which we're going to look at the commentary. I hope we'll get to it. But one of the things is there'd be horrendous chaos in a family if everybody could sleep with everybody all the
You're
time.
right.
I mean, it would be chaotic. It would be crazy. It would be emotionally and psychologically damaging. And that was one of the reasons. And this was cultic. This was part of a religion, which we're going to get to in 5 minutes. Go ahead, Cindy.
So where are we? You shall not.
You shall
Okay.
not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, brought up in your father's family, since she is your sister.
So this is your stepsister, even, or okay, keep going.
Half sister.
Yeah.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister. She is your father's relative. So that's your aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, for she is your mother's relative.
So that's your aunt.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother. That is, you shall not approach his wife. She is your aunt.
Okay.
A lot of rules. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's wife. It is your brother's nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of a woman and of her daughter, and you shall not take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness. They are relatives. It is depravity.
Okay, so this again is grandchildren and a woman and her daughter, or your sons, your grandchildren. It's all terrible. Susan, yes.
Yes, I wanted to remark that Aram married Yocheved, who was his aunt.
She was his aunt?
Yes,
Is that true?
he was his aunt, his father's sister.
Well, all of these things now are.
Yeah, but the rules,
right.
The rules are laid down here. This was before this.
Well, look at this one, Susan, because this happened all the time in the book of Genesis. You read.
Do not marry a woman, rival wife to her sister. Uncovering her nakedness while her sister is still alive. Rachel and Leah. So
Rachel and Leah,
and Sarah.
I think it's more emotional than physical.
It's
going.
It's going to create chaos,
exactly,
rivalry, and yes. So okay, Susan, keep going.
Okay, so you should not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she's in her menstrual uncleanness.
So there's this whole thing, you don't have sex with a woman while she has her period in Judaism.
But that's helpful to the woman, I think.
Yeah, of course it is. But she's also in the red tent, so to speak, as we know. She's supposed to be separated anyway.
Anyway, separated anyway because it's not pleasant for a woman, particularly who loves
Keep
having.
going.
Do not have carnal relationships with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. You should not give any of your children to offer them to Moloch, and so profane the name of your God.
So that was burning or sacrificing your children alive to another god. And now, after all of these, comes to continue.
Should not lie with a male as with a woman. It's an abhorrence.
So this is all in context of what the Canaanites do and the Egyptians do. all these things. So we're going to look at some commentary about it, but it's one in a huge list of things that was considered pagan, and so you don't do it. Not that this alone is the most horrible thing in the world and you're going to hell or this or that, but this was all considered part of pagan, actually, a lot of it pagan ritual and worship, which we're going to look at. And so it's in that there were, we know, male prostitutes and female cult prostitutes, and male and female, in the Canaanite temples and the Egyptian temples, but also for a while in our own Jerusalem temples, because it's in the Bible, there were male and female prostitutes, cultic prostitutes that they had to get rid of. So it was all about idol worship, is what some interpretation is. Okay.
And so the other thing, Tamar also was thought to be a prostitute for Judah when he was going on.
That's right. That's right. And
so
he slept
what
with
I found interesting reading it this time, it inserts Moloch and child sacrifice in the midst. These are all sexual taboos we've been dealing with and will continue to deal with. And in the center is this sacrificing children to this god. So, I mean, that's horrendous too. And it also becomes the valley, what is it? Gehenna, which becomes the afterworld and the kind of hell.
Hell. Oh, yeah.
But why is that in the middle? That shouldn't that
because because all of these are rituals of idol worship.
Okay.
All of these were done as part of idol worship, not just social taboos like, oh, don't sleep with, but it was like, we go to the temple, Canaanite temple, and I sleep with my niece, we sleep with this. I mean, I'm going to show you, I want to show in 2 minutes how it said how they worshipped and why this, then you'll see it in context, but just
one thing, it's not saying idol worship here. It just, I mean, this is the first time it struck me. Moloch is the death of your children. And it's, even though these are all idol worship, all of these are sexual taboos, but they don't put, you're saying it's all idol worship. I mean, religious taboos, but they don't have idols in there, which was a biggie for God.
Okay, I'm going to show you in a minute.
Okay.
Let's finish this. And you shall not lie with any animal and defile yourself with it. Neither shall any woman give herself to an animal to lie with. It is perversion. So they did that. Do not defile yourself by any of these things, but it is by such that the nations I'm driving you out before you have defiled themselves. So again, it reiterates, this is what the other nations did as part of their cultic behavior. And then it just says, you'll be kicked out of, they're being kicked out of their land, and you're going to be kicked out if you do this. Okay. So all of these are, okay, now, because I want to rush, I'm rushing because I want to show you the other one, which I find really interesting, and homosexuality in the Torah. Okay, so, hold on. Okay, so Brad, I'm gonna ask you to read, but here are the quotes. If you would, okay. Here is, okay, Brad, why don't you read from here?
The text itself gives us a big clue as to the intended meaning. 3 different times we're specifically told that the rules set forth in chapters 18 and 20 are meant to prevent the Israelites from doing what the Egyptians and Canaanites did. The term Canaanites refers to a group of nations who lived in the land into which the Israelites migrated when they left Egypt. It follows, therefore, if we can determine what type of homosexual behavior was common amongst the Canaanites and Egyptians, we will better understand what these verses were meant to prohibit. Biblical historians...
I'm going to do this because I think it's so interesting. Go ahead.
Biblical historians tell us the Canaanite religions surrounding the Israelites at the time of Leviticus often included fertility rites consisting of sexual rituals. These rituals were thought to bring the blessing of the god or goddess on crop and livestock production. During the rituals, whole families, including husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, cousins, aunts, and uncles, would sometimes have sex, also included with sex with temple prostitutes. In short, every kind of sexual practice imaginable was performed at these rituals, including homosexual sex.
Okay, so this one I found fascinating too. Consider one specific example. Historians tell us that many Canaanites and Egyptians worshipped a goddess of love and fertility called Astarte or Ishtar. Within her temple were special priests called Asinu, who were deemed to have special powers. Physical contact with the Asinu is believed to ward off evil and promote good luck. These priests were in effect living good luck charms, and worshipers would often ritually touch them as part of their worship practices. Okay, so one more I'm going to read. Sexual intercourse was considered especially effective for gaining the goddess's favor because the male worshiper was offering his greatest possession, semen, which was thought to be the essence of life, to the goddess through her priests. Depositing semen in the body of a priest of the goddess was believed to guarantee one immortality. Similar cultic sexual practices flourished in connection with many other ancient pagan deities. So homosexual sex was a kind of a worship for immortality, for a long life. And this writer believes this is what was meant by the taboo. This is what was going on in Canaan and Egypt at the time of the Levitical rules were announced: homosexual temple prostitution. And as already noted, Leviticus 18 and 20 specifically say they were written to address pagan ritual practices. So there's this idea, this is, modern, actually, idea that loving homosexual relationships that we know of were not what they were referring to. They didn't even imagine such a thing, though I imagine it existed because it always existed, as we know. But it was talking about a taboo of a religious worship through homosexual sex. So what do you think about that? Do you think that makes sense to you? Do you, Brad, what do you think? I see you shaking your head, sort of.
I think it makes eminent sense.
And that actual relationship, this person goes on to say, actual relationship homosexual sex is not what it's referring to. That's not the forbidden thing. It's because it's always in the context of pagan worship. You're not, if you're loving a person or whatever. I also wonder, though, because around when this time was the Torah was being written or put together, it was around the time of Greece, ancient Greece, like 400 BCE, and homosexuality was very, very common in ancient Greece. I mean, almost every man, when he was young, had a relationship with an older man, and then he got married, a boy, a teen, or whatever. It was very common. So again, it's like we're not going to be like them. Cindy.
Yeah, I think that half is completely right, but I remember talking elsewhere about sex for procreation, and that's you don't want to waste sperm, which in a homosexual relationship, there's no chance of pregnancy. And that's why later on there's rules about when you have sex, because that increases the chance of a pregnancy with intercourse.
Right, but is it that you're wasting semen? So any homosexual sex would be considered taboo, cultic
because
or not?
Because there's no chance of a pregnancy.
No, but you're wasting semen.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Susan.
Oh, I think this was very interesting. I think it's a point. It may be part of it, but I don't think it's the whole story at all. Because I think we're talking about sex, sex, And the relationships between a mother and one's father's wife, that's not all cultic and religious. We're talking about a hothouse atmosphere within the family. And maybe there was some knowledge that the good Lord had that this could also cause physical problems when and their intimate relationships. I don't think this is all cultic. And
Well, okay, but everybody else, they're related. This is like two men. They don't say they're related. You can't sleep with your nephew, your father, your whatever.
So you're just talking about the homosexual part. I'm talking about the whole
and the
part.
animal part. Also, the animal part. You know what I mean?
And the animal part, and I think Penina was really on.
Right. So, Penina.
All right. Who said that the AIDS was a illness that nobody ever knew about before?
What, AIDS?
It's when AIDS came to the surface. AIDS, the disease, when it came to the surface, okay?
Yeah.
We thought it was something new. Who says it was something new? Who knows?
There's no history of it. There was syphilis, there was gonorrhea.
History. They said that it started somewhere where there is not enough of in the education and stuff.
Yeah, no, Penina, but AIDS, a man and a woman can give each other AIDS. It's
yeah,
not just...
but we named it now. Who says that it didn't exist then and they never named it as a disease? They just saw a condition and maybe they said, oh, it happens to this person, and maybe there was a lot of what's not supposed to be done by this guy.
But Penina, you can get AIDS. A man and a woman can get AIDS.
Yes, exactly.
So it has nothing to do with homosexuality.
That's why they say don't do it with this and don't do it with this and a relative and again and blah blah blah.
But it does nothing.
And it spreads it everything.
Syphilis from anybody.
Right.
They had syphilis.
Exactly. Maybe they recognize that there is diseases that could be transmitted that way.
Yes,
the same way that they discovered that they drink blood is not really good for you.
I don't think, but drinking blood is not, this is, well, okay, we all have our opinions, but this is surrounded, the beginning, the introduction and the conclusion both say, this is what they did in Canaan, this is what they did in Egypt.
Yes, but why the prohibition? Why not to do it? That's what I'm talking about.
Because it was idol worship. It was worship.
I agree with you, but there was other things that were idol worshiping, and they picked and chose what is and what was not.
But you could get disease from a stranger outside your family.
Absolutely.
So it had nothing to do with this.
I think these taboos, I mean, I don't think there's any, you can't have witchcraft, you can't do astrology, you can't do any, I mean, there's everywhere. There's taboos of every kind against idol worship.
Because science wasn't that developed at that time that they can divide.
No, it's not about science. I don't think it's about science. I think it's about avodah zarah, as you said. I think it's about...
Yeah,
about...
That's where it started. Yes.
I mean, we know...
Why to prohibit it? Why to say no?
Because it's worshiping Moloch. It's worshiping Isis. It's worshiping, Ishtarte and whatever, Astarte and yes.
Who says that what happened 50 years ago when this thing with the AIDS started, that something didn't start at that time that they couldn't name yet?
Years and years ago, when my father was still alive, he was a fairly well-known diagnostician physician in Los Angeles.
Right.
And when people started getting bizarre diseases, AIDS was one of them, people needed something to blame something on to stay politically out of this.
Right.
And they used as but you could get diseases from a blood transfusion where blood wasn't.
Yes, absolutely.
Look at I'm COVID. Saying science, you just have to cough, you can get it.
Right, exactly.
Brad, did you want to say something?
Well, I just think they're missing the point. I mean, these are about orgiastic practices that were part of ritual behavior, all to produce fertility. I mean, they were part of fertility rites.
That's right.
And intricate and inseparable from those fertility rites.
Okay.
And those were all part of these idol worshiping civilizations. So I think it makes eminent sense. This has nothing to do with a loving relationship between two men. I mean, outside of these fertility, I think we're dealing with something, as you try to point out, which is very, very, very specific to these fertility rites.
Right. I think so too. And so everybody don't worship any idols. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Always fun to discuss
Yes.
and learn with
Shabbat
you.
shalom. This was great. Thank
This
you.
is great.
Have a great weekend,
You
everyone.
too.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.